Hi, this is Bastian, and today we're going to explore a way to fight against the Dutch defense, which is the Manhattan variation. I'll be playing a game against the 1860 opponent. I start with d4, black plays f5, so we're seeing the Dutch defense, and I play queen to d3, and this move violates opening theory because I develop the queen prematurely. However, the queen is perfectly placed on d3. Pawns cannot attack the queen easily because my pawn can block the advances, and knights that develop also cannot attack the queen immediately. Furthermore, I have an immediate attack on the unprotected pawn on f5. So many players don't like this opening strategy. Personally, I do like it. It's not easy to refute. Let's see how the game continues. Black plays e6, protecting the pawn. e5 is impossible anyways, so now the pawn is protected, but black has created two long-term weaknesses in that he has opened both diagonals to the king and the queen. Now we'll try to develop in order to attack those weaknesses, but first we continue with the Manhattan opening, and I play g4, and this is called the Dutch gambit in the Manhattan. It's also called the Pretzel gambit. Reason, of course, is to activate the diagonal of the queen by getting rid of this pawn on f5. So black accepts, and this is called the Manhattan gambit. I play h3. Black accepts again, and now I have a choice to recapture with either bishop, knight, or rook. So I'm actually down only one pawn. And this is a matter of playing style. I recaptured with the bishop, so bishop takes. What's also possible, of course, is to recapture with the knight, but I don't like this type of development, because then I will probably fianchetto the bishop to g2, which may allow me to castle, and if I castle, we can see that my king is unsafe because there are no longer any pawns on the G&H file. Also, if I play bishop to g2, these two squares are covered, and if I don't castle, my own rook will become locked in. On the other hand, if I develop with the bishop, which was played, I can develop my knight freely. I can place my rook on a half open file, and I can castle into safety queenside. The downside is that this bishop is now on the blunted diagonal, so there's a bit of a trade-off. Yet bishop to h3 was played, which I like the most. Black continues with knight to c6. I play knight to f3. So, among other things, the knight development threatens the pawn on d4. So if I move my queen, this pawn is hanging. Developing the knight, which was my plan anyways, protects that pawn. d5, gaining control of the center. And now bishop to g5. As said before, attacking one of the diagonals. There is no possibility to prevent this attack with a pawn. So unless black wants to move the queen, he needs to block with his bishop or the knight. And black chooses the aggressive bishop to e7. And finally I play my rook on the half open file, immediately protecting the bishop on g5. Now, of course, black could recapture the bishop, but let's see what happens if he does. If bishop takes, knight recaptures, I have two pieces attacking the pawn on h7. I am immediately attacking the backwards pawn on e6, and it's impossible to get rid of this knight. So let's say h6 is played. To try and chase it away, I can play queen to g6 check. Three possibilities. King to f8 leads to mate. What else? King to d7 also leads to mate. And king to e7 allows white to grab the pawn, forking the king with the rook. And if king to d6 to escape mate, I can play knight to f7, triple fork, even gaining the queen. So this is clearly losing for black. So after rook to g1, black decides not to capture the bishop, instead fortifies the diagonal with knight to f6. So he's placing a second piece on the diagonal. Furthermore, this piece is protected by the pawn. This also allows black to castle. So I continue with knight b to d2, bringing more pieces into the attack. Black plays bishop to d7. I castle queenside. Black castles kingside, and this is a typical continuation in the Dutch defense. This pawn is gone and used to be a weakness, with an open diagonal attacking the king. But after castling, this king is now into safety, and this rook is now on a half open file and has become more powerful. So the game continues with bishop to h6, taking full advantage of the half open file with an attack on g7. And of course, the pawn cannot advance because I can capture the rook. There's only one defense, that's knight to h5, protecting that pawn. Perhaps this rook can move and this pawn can advance later on in the game, but right now black needs immediate defense against that threat. And the continuation is very simple. I want to play bishop to g4 and attack black's knight, eliminating a defender, and create an attack on the pawn on g7, making the king more unsafe. So I play bishop to g4. Keep in mind that this blocks the discovered check, and now black can recapture my bishop. Black recaptures the bishop. I recapture the knight with check. King flees to g8. So if you look back, we can see that black probably didn't play the correct move after bishop to g4. Correct move was probably knight to f4, threatening the queen and also threatening a check and a fork, which may have led to bishop recaptures and then rook recaptures, eliminating a lot of threat on black's king. However, this move wasn't played. I believe white still keeps an edge even if it was played, but black recaptures the bishop. I recapture the knight, so we have doubled isolated pawns and a weak king. Also we gain tempo with a check. Not much choice, king to h8. Bishop to g6. Now, of course, black can recapture the bishop. Eventually, if black doesn't respond to the bishop, I can play queen to e3 and take on the pawn on h6 and later on h7. If black were to try and recapture the bishop, let's say pawn takes bishop, I can play queen to g6, threatening mate on g7. And there's no defense to it. let's say rook to f7 to prevent that mate. I can grab the rook and continue with the attack, so that's definitely losing for black. Instead, bishop to g5, which will block the mate, could lead to knight takes. Then if queen recaptures, rook takes, pawn recaptures, rook to h1 mate. So we still have one more piece available into the attack. So after bishop to g6, there is no danger of black recapturing my bishop. Black instead plays knight to b4, attacking the queen and attacking the pawn on a2 with tempo and a check on my king. I play queen to e3, a move that was would have been played anyways. And now the main threat is, let's say if a6 is played, queen takes h6, threatening mate on h7 with little defense to it. So if rook to f7 is played, I can simply grab the rook. So that's the main threat. If not a6, a random move is played, but pawn takes bishop, we can continue with queen takes pawn, forcing king to g8, queen takes pawn check, king to h8, rook h1 mate. So that doesn't seem to work. So after knight takes a2, so I'm sorry, knight takes a2 was played, gaining tempo. King goes to b1, and now bishop to g5. And this move blocks the capture of the pawn on h6. So how do we deal with this? We grab the bishop, I mean, with the knight. Pawn recaptures, and now rook takes pawn. Recapturing the knight is not strong enough. Again, the bishop cannot be recaptured, because if pawn takes bishop, rook takes pawn, and there are too many pieces that can come in and give mate. For instance, rook to f7, rook h1 check, rook blocks, then queen to e5 will continue to mate, queen to f6 blocks, and queen takes, queen on f6 is a mate. There are other options as well, of course. Let's say rook takes rook, king recaptures, queen to h6 mate also works. What else is possible? Even queen to h3, another defender, rook to h6, king flees, rook takes rook, and so forth. And this will also lead into a mate in a few moves, depending on your playing style. Safe to say that black is lost. So let's go back. Rook to g8, rook to h1. Now the bishop cannot be captured because of the check. If black were to try rook takes bishop, I can recapture and bring the queen on e5 with mate. So again, white shouldn't fear the capture of his bishop. Rook to g7 was played instead to defend the pawn on h7. Queen to e5. So this makes this defense useless because of the discovered check. Queen to f8. Rook takes pawn. Check, and the rook cannot be recaptured. King to g8. Rook takes rook check. Queen recaptures. Bishop to h7, check. Now, of course, the bishop once again cannot be recaptured because of the discovered check. So this bishop has proven to be quite annoying for black. King goes to f8, queen takes queen, check, king to e8, bishop to g6, check, king to d8, queen to f8, check, bishop blocks, and finally queen takes bishop is a checkmate. So I hope that this system gave you some ideas in facing the Dutch defense. Thanks for watching, and please leave a comment and have a great evening.